So Letterman.
Mhm. All right. Thank you for joining us for our last timely topics. Well, at least in this format. For all good things, there's a start and an end. However, we quite are excited about this opportunity to transition timely topics and aren't really saying goodbye. But before we dive into what we are doing, we would need to uncover where we're going to really understand where we have been. So Timely Topics started during the pandemic as a virtual speaker series as part of our family business program. So for those of you that have followed along since then in early 2020, you will remember that we wanted to reach a little bit bigger of an audience virtually to tie them into relative business topics that were happening, connect them with business leaders and community members. And as CCEI started to look at this opportunity, we said, how can we make this bigger? How can we make this better? So in January of 22, we launched this current iteration of Timely Topics, which we call a podcast style session. So some of you are here with us live in Zoom, and we usually generate some audience, but there's also additional value in those that have listened and tuned in after the interactions and engagement we have on our social media platforms and people that come back in and connect with our guest speakers post-event. So it's not just the 30 minutes we're here live together, but this time carries post this moment. So if you can remember all the way back to what it was like in January 2022, which is almost 2 years ago now, it was not yet 2 years into the pandemic. So we really weren't traveling a lot, right? So at least the capacity that we did before 2020, there really weren't as many in-person events. And if I can remember, I believe we had another uptick in COVID numbers in January that year. We were starting to kind of come back in. We were doing some online classes at UConn again, trying to really keep ourselves safe and tucked in at home. But I can say, speaking for myself and the other entrepreneurs we were working with, that we still crave that interaction with others. We didn't necessarily want to jeopardize the health of ourselves and others to get that interaction, but we really wanted to find a way to find meaningful conversations and communities to join that we could do so potentially in an online format. And we've also heard from entrepreneurs that they weren't really actively engaging with others, other thought leaders, other entrepreneurs, or really any human that were experiencing similarly challenging journeys, whether it be in business or in life. So our platform became the place where real life trials and tribulations of the entrepreneurial journey and a good number of executive coaches and mentors that support them were highlighted, and hopefully giving our audience some insights that allowed them to learn a little bit more about themselves. And so over the course of the last 2 years, we hosted nearly 40 timely topic sessions. That's about one in every 2.5 weeks or so, with more than 50 guest speakers. So from Andy Mackin, who hosted the timely topic session, he was here in Hartford in our center visiting from Ireland, and to our friends down in Hawaii, Michael Rogers and Marie Carl, who are military veterans, husband and wife. They moved to Hawaii to open a chocolate farm. I mean, talk about really awesome story and life journey for them. To our live timely topic sessions we hosted at the CCEI 15th anniversary celebration over a year ago, which again, crazy how quickly time flies that we were celebrating that more than a year ago today. And we titled that the timeliest of topics. And to highlight a few of my favorite, early on, we hosted Ryan Gresh. He's the CEO and founder of the Feel Good Lab and one of CCI's advisory board members. His talk was titled Riding the Roller Coaster of Entrepreneurship. Definitely a good title and fitting for Ryan's journey. But something Ryan mentioned throughout this talk was this concept that success and failure lead to the same place, dissatisfaction. And he said, rather, it comes from the lessons we learn along the way that changes the trajectory of our lives, whether or not we define it as a success or a failure. We also hosted a session called The Relationship Between Creativity and Burnout, hosted by Nova Lorraine. And Nova notes the importance of understanding the why behind what we are doing. And I know that's something that we stand true at CCEI when we're talking with entrepreneurs and building businesses. The why is super important. And she said, if you don't know or really value the why, it very quickly leads to burnout. And on the flip side, if you really lean into your why, it can lead to great levels of creativity. And other session titles that in itself, the name has left me inspired: Productivity Powerhouse, How Grit Turns into Growth. It's about time. using self-awareness as a strength in your entrepreneurial journey. What does success mean to you? Wherever you are is a great place to begin. Master your magic, and honoring ambition without sacrificing well-being. So some of those titles may sound familiar to you because you either hosted them, you sat in on them, you listened to them after, but definitely some great talks about a very broad array of topics, whether it impacts you as an entrepreneur or really you as a person. And I'd like to acknowledge our Timely Topics program coordinator, Michaela Hartle, who's on the call here. And so Michaela has been managing this program over the last 2 years, and she found all of our guests, worked with them to develop their talks. She's really the creative behind the Timely Topics sessions names that I just listed and many more that are on our website. Thank you for all of your support in bringing really great connection to this community over the last 2 years. And I want to wrap up my highlight reel by reminding the group that our very own Rory McGloin joined us early on and talked about the value of storytelling and why understanding your story, your personal story, your story of your business is so important. It's like we had a crystal ball, or keeping in the theme of story, we foreshadowed what was to come with this program during this session. So the importance of storytelling and why, and like the why behind communicating value to your business, your potential customers and the stakeholders, it's the impetus for a lot of the work that we're doing with our founders and the underlying reason behind what we're building at CCEI. So I'm now going to turn it over to Rory to share more about this exciting new venture that we are taking on as a center and as a team. Rory.
Wow. Thank you, Jen. I have goosebumps going through that little trip down memory lane because for me, I've relatively been here for all of it. Bringing us back to the COVID era was right when Rory got his start at CCI and has never looked back. What an amazing team to be a part of. And Jen, I think we did do some foreshadowing there many years ago. So we told a story there just now about how it's been really hard to get people in the same place as a result of COVID. And sometimes even we seems to have fragmented our time and our schedule. So when we thought about where can Timely Topics go next, well, the answer was really right in front of us all along. We had wanted it to be like a podcast. And so we figured what better thing than to just create and launch a podcast that's not only going to allow us to interact with the same volume of people, but hopefully reach a wider and more diverse audience as a result of that. In just a moment, I'm going to unveil for you the space that I'm in, but I want to remind us of how cherished we all are to actually just be in the spaces that we are today. When we look back over those last now 3.5 years, we missed going into spaces. And I long had a vision that would allow people at CCEI to come together to learn about story, but to also practice their craft. And we didn't quite have exactly that. We had a classroom, but classrooms are sometimes not the best training grounds when you want to get in front of a camera, or you maybe want to practice recording, listening to your voice, seeing yourself on screen, work in front of the good old-fashioned virtual backgrounds that we all have. And so thanks to the leadership from our executive director, Jen, thanks to the support of this amazing CCI team, we are excited today to make our first official public launch of what we are now calling the Collaboratory at CCEI. It's a pretty exciting moment for all of us, Jen. We've been working really hard to create a space, a little space, if you will, right here in downtown Hartford that will serve not only as what we will probably refer to as the studio, but likely a home for many in the future to come in and to practice and hone their craft, not just that story, but the ability to deliver it, to be compelling, and to have an opportunity to train their skills so that they can go out into the world and share their story with a lot of different audiences. So with that being said, welcome to the world Collaboratory. It's nice to finally meet you and to have this out in public. This will always be an iterative process because technology is changing right before our very eyes. And so we hope to grow alongside you and with you as part of this process. Timely Topics ultimately is only not going anywhere. It will be hopefully more available for many folks in the future to come and to be a part of.
Thank you so much for that intro. Can you talk a little bit about the tie-in between, one, what is the Collaboratory, and how does that tie into Timely Topics?
So I would be remiss if I probably didn't take a little personal note on this one to say that I've long had an ambition to try to create an actual physical space that would allow people to gather that shared a passion or an interest around not just communication, but producing great communication. I've always found it to be incredibly helpful for me in my journey to be able to record and to watch back and to critique myself. And although that can be a little bit overwhelming, I think it's really rewarding. And then to be able to help others you can only tell them so many things, Jen, but when they get a chance to do it themselves, it really makes a difference. So now we have our very own space. And the name, the Collaboratory, well, the idea was that we're right here in Hartford, and pretty much what we do better than anybody that I know is that we don't only put people on stages, but Jen, you always hear me say this, we build the stage, right? We are going to not only help you get to that next stage in your entrepreneurial journey, but we want to put you on stage. We want to feature you. We want to make you just as famous as the brand and the value propositions that you're working so hard to create. And so the Collaboratory is exactly that, right? It's an opportunity for CCEI and for all of us here to collaborate with our constituencies and our stakeholders, our friends of CCEI, our alumni of CCEI, our future alumni of CCEI. And although we're going to start relatively pretty small, we've got some pretty big ambitions over the years to come that this space will grow, that it will attract potential support from the foundation and from our friends and donors who have come through our program, who know how important this part of the process is. We want to work with small business and big business alike. But most importantly, we really do want to create a space that's just going to allow us to come in and to create great content that we can share. We think that we have not only an amazing story here at CCEI and the work that we do, but we know darn well that all of the businesses that we support and the communities that we engage, their story is really important too. And so we've just built another stage that will exist on a daily basis for us to come in and to capture that content and to be able to share it.
Yeah, and I think another important part to note is this journey of thought leadership that we've been on as individuals in the center and then as a team over the last year or so, and thinking about how do we model behavior for entrepreneurs. We're basically running kind of like a little startup on our own, right? CCEI, and thinking about who we're serving, the value we're providing, and always trying to pivot and add other services to support them as they're growing. And we think about carrying forward, modeling that behavior through active thought leadership. And a piece of that is the podcast.
So yeah, let's talk about the podcast, Jen. So the Collaboratory, right, is going to be the home, the space, the physical arena where we're going to come in and we're going to create and we're going to gather and tell stories. But the podcast will be an homage and directly renamed right after the Timely Topics series. So in many ways, Aloha was, of course, the appropriate title, both goodbye and hello for Timely Topics. So ultimately, the show's going nowhere. And we expect to launch our first episode for the public to consume sometime in the early part of the first quarter. So keep your social media eyes and ears tuned on that. There'll be lots of marketing materials coming your way in anticipation of the launch. The show will be called Timely Topics with Rory and Jen. And the tagline goes something like, bringing you all the buzz and banter of business right here in the greater Hartford and Connecticut area. We want to talk about and have the conversations that you're having with your friends and families in the evenings, on the weekends, what's going on at work. And we want to bring it to life in a way that's fun and engaging. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship. We're going to talk about business, but we're also going to talk about how our individual personalities and the way that we grow and evolve fit into all of this. So not just for founders, not just for entrepreneurs, but if you're living and working and playing in the greater Hartford area, if you're here in Connecticut with us and you're part of this ecosystem, we definitely invite you to tune in. We're going to have audience engagement segments. So our marketing team and Michaela are going to be working hard. Kate and Alicia are here. They're going to be sending out some calls to get your thoughts, your opinions, your recommendations. And so there'll be a lot of opportunities. So you get featured on air. And if you have an idea for a topic or a business that you might like to see us feature, please let us know. We are all ears. We want to make this something that is for the people and really accessible for everybody that's in our ecosystem.
Yeah. So talking about engaging our population, I know that there was a call out on social media last week, I believe, to engage some of our followers in asking questions about what we are doing, what we are building. And I know we've teased it a little bit through various platforms, but Michaela has collected a few of the questions and wanted to share some of them. And of course, if you're here listening in live, feel free to do the same as well. Ask a question if you want to throw it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. But let's start with at least one from the online audience.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the questions was, what did you learn from the first version of Timely Topics that you're going to take with you into the next version?
Jen, you want to go first? Because I have some thoughts.
Yeah, no, I definitely do. You go first.
So one of the things that really stood out to me, Michaela, was that we have an incredible array of people in our community, right? Like when Jen was going through that list of folks that were a part of Timely Topics, and she only like touched upon some of them, I'm going, wow, like we have so many amazing people. We have so much talent. They're all people that I want to talk to like right now. Like I wish they were here and they were part of this conversation. And I think the thing that we learned is that like we've got this amazing group of people that are engaging with CCEI and they want to talk to us and they want to come in, they want to share their story. But we really probably needed a mechanism that was going to allow us to better capture them, right? So one of the aspects of the show is going to be an interview, but we're not going to have the entire podcast feature just an interview, because if you look around the podcast market, there's interview shows everywhere. And honestly, I feel like they're a little bit saturated. So we are going to have guests on, but one of the things you can be excited about is they're going to be very curated. Our interview clips are going to be somewhere between like 10, no more than 15 minutes. They're going to be short, regardless of who the guest is, regardless of how excited you are that we're having them on. We want to provide a diversity or range of content. And probably looking back at the original Timely Topics format, the half an hour was great in terms of checking in during your lunch break, but maybe it didn't allow people to check in at the right amount of time. So we're hoping to make the show have a piece of dynamism to it. So the interviews that you're going to get from all of your favorite people and more, they'll be a little bit shorter. They'll be a little bit more curated. They're going to be edited down to the best bits. And hopefully that's going to just like encourage you to want to keep checking back in with our show that's going to come out every month, just to kind of see what's different and what's unique. So a little bit of diversity in the content, but also still maximizing all the great people that we have in our community.
Yeah, I think for me, the audience engagement was the biggest piece of it. And it was actually one of those things where we said, we have some repeat offenders that come in every time, or that at least try to pop in, or we know have asked us for the clip. Sometimes they're like, hey, did you get it up yet? And it's like, the podcast just ended, or the session just ended, 30 minutes ago, give us a minute. So we knew that there were people that were interested in engaging, and we didn't want to necessarily shut out that interactive nature. So being able to work with Rory and the marketing team at CCEI to say, how can we keep our audience engaged when they're not going to be able to sit with us live every 2 weeks, right? But we want to make sure that their ideas are heard, their questions, their comments, their feedback. And that was a piece that we were able to build in. And I think that was a definite point of learning. Again, when I said at the beginning, this whole thing was thinking about engagement, engaging our community, and how do we bring us closer together in a virtual world. And that engagement aspect is huge.
Awesome. Okay, so next up is probably my favorite question. What advice do you have for individuals or businesses looking to thrive in the new year?
That's good. Rory just teed it up to me. And I think this is actually one of those pieces that we will do in the podcast, right? Is actually giving some thoughts and advice and some feedback and coaching, whether it's the person that's coming in to get interviewed, or we're talking about a specific topic related to entrepreneurship, or specifically communicating the value of your company, which we're going to have lots of examples of that coming in and out of the collaboratory space that I'm sure we're going to talk about. I think for me, it's the importance is just to continue to redefine why you're doing what you're doing, and deep diving into that with your team, your leadership team. I think that's huge for businesses. We constantly need to reinvent ourselves and make sure that what we say we're doing, and the value that we're providing is actually there for our customers and for other stakeholders, whether that be our employees, our teams. And if we're thinking of growing, that we're always leaning back into that why. And I don't know that there's enough businesses that are taking a step back and being really introspective in the frequency that they should. And there's a lot of things that are pulling on their time for obvious reasons, but there's a lot of work that they can do as individual entrepreneurs. The effort doesn't stop at the point of launching the company, right? You're always growing as a leader, always growing as an individual. And how do you then in turn do that really thoughtfully with your team and tie those values back in to what you're constantly building and reiterating?
Yeah. And Jen, I love that, because it's probably an area that we spend a lot of time working on with organizations or with startups that they tend to overlook, right? Getting stuck in the spots that they're in. I'm going to go in a different direction for my piece of advice, Michaela. I think a lot of organizations that were able to survive the pandemic, and we've taken a trip down memory lane here today, and even at CCEI for ourselves, right? Like there's so many organizations that they reinvented themselves and they found new opportunities and they found new business development lanes. And if they're still going strong in 2024, there probably is going to need to be a focus on sustainability, right? Like they've grown, they've expanded, right? People have taken on new roles. And so I would invite some of those organizations that have experienced like great success and a lot of growth and development to maybe bring it back to the idea of like 1%, right? And there was a piece going around from a friend of mine on LinkedIn this morning about Jerry Seinfeld has this like minimal, right? What's a good day? What's a minimum good day? Was it 100 jokes or 50 jokes? And no, for Jerry, it was one joke, right? And I think that it kind of relates to that 1% concept. So I would invite any of the businesses that are going to tune in, they're going to talk to us. Like we want to focus on those ideas too, right? Big growth is great. It's exciting. We spend a lot of time in that space. But for any of the businesses out there, for any of the leaders that have done really well over the last several years, maybe use 2024 as an opportunity to say, like, how can we sustain our greatness in these areas? How do we make sure that we don't go backwards? And to Jen's point, continually reinventing yourselves and making sure your why is at the forefront of everything you do. So important to make sure that you don't lose out on any of those gains that maybe you have made over the last several years.
Yeah. And I think that also ties into that quote that I read from Ryan Gresh, that he said the very same thing of like, if we're focused so much on whether we were successful or we failed, and that's the point of reflection, that's our point of gauge on whether we're worthy of what we're doing. It's actually in the lessons that we're learning along the way that's more important. And I think that that's, it actually ties in really my answer and yours, is being reflective and taking the moment to understand why and using that information to inform choices that you're making moving forward.
Yeah. Love that. What else you got, Michaela?
So the next one, can you give us some hints onto the topics that will be covered in the new year?
No, they're totally top secret, highly confidential. We can't let them out. Of course we can. And I think that's going to be the question that's going to be on everybody's mind. Really, one of the things that we're excited to do is we're going to give every episode, which will be coming out every month. And like I said, you can keep an eye on it. We're hoping to have that first one out sometime in the first quarter of 24. Behind us is, our studio, which is still in build. We've assembled a really great team. What are we going to do for themes? We've looked at some kind of like big picture topics. We want to come in and we want to talk about things like risk. We want to deal with success. We want to talk about failure, inspiration, topics that I think are on all of our minds, not just in the way that we work, but in the way that we live, right? These are topics that are taking place and they're having conversations in your homes, with your families, with your friends, with your business partners. And so we're going to have each episode have a theme, and that theme is going to carry through each of the different segments that we're going to have in the show. So we're going to, of course, have an introductory section. It wouldn't be Jen and Rory if we didn't have a conversation to open things. We're going to have audience correspondence. We are going to have a timely topic segment that will focus on a really timely topic, something that's going on in the world of business today. And Jen and I will be not just sharing our thoughts and opinions, but we have a number of great researchers working behind the scenes that are going to be feeding us all sorts of interesting knowledge and facts and kind of key ideas. We're going to have a segment called Good Idea, Bad Idea to wrap the show up. And so the theme of the show is going to carry from start to finish. And I know that in season 1, we're going to have some shows on risk, inspiration, success, failure. If you've got an idea for something that you really want us to dig into, pop it in the chat or just send us a DM onto any of our social media links, and that'll get back to us. And we will be happy to try and accommodate some of those themes and ideas. Jen, anything that you want to make sure that we talk about in season 1?
That's funny. You just kicked it over to me because I was just about to ask you. I wanted to know which one of those you were most excited to dive into.
I know that we're going to do something very early on in regards to like the brand and the value of a brand. And so, of course, Timely Topics is experiencing its own brand transition right now. And we're going to ask some questions about like, when is it the right time to evolve your brand or to make a change? And I think for big business, right, it's a really big investment. But I think even for individuals that are going to tune into that episode, I hope that there's a bit of a reminder that like your brand is constantly evolving and that there's never a good or bad time to take the leap and to like move your brand into a new space. You just kind of have to have sometimes a little bit of faith and a lot of intuition that you're doing it at the right time. I'm going to be excited to see what audiences think about that, because some people get really fixated on brands. Take a look at our Husky mascot, right? Over the years, if you've been around for a long time, you've now had a few different mascots to deal with, and sometimes change is good, but sometimes people don't like to necessarily see change. So I think that's going to provoke a bit of a reaction from our listeners.
Okay.
What else you got, Michaela?
Let's wrap up the questions with this one. What is the long-term goal with this new project?
Mm. I have often joked, and I think everybody basically tried to start some sort of show during the pandemic, myself included. And it was a great opportunity to just try your hand at something new. I think we all felt like we needed to contribute to the world's conversation in a way. And I think a lot of people are excited about starting podcasts. And I've often joked and lamented that, does anybody know how to finish one? Right? Like, what does that look like? What's the exit strategy on content creation? Lucky for us, we have the entire CCEI organization, family, and alumni behind us that we probably won't have to think about that very soon. So in regards to thinking about the goal for this project, I really hope that it gives everybody in our ecosystem a chance to feel like we are listening, that we are creating the content that they've long been asking for. We've had so many conversations with members on our advisory board and folks that are just, supporters of us, that have said, we want to see you. We want to know what you're working on. We want to see your content. Like, get out there and get on the forefront. And this is our first step into that foray. I hope that it is the small snowball on the top of a really big hill. And that once we start rolling, that we can really pick up some momentum, and that we can help not just our team, but folks in our community to feel more and more comfortable with taking that giant leap to create their own content, to get their message out there. And hopefully it'll be not just inspiring, but it'll be a learning opportunity for us and for a lot of the folks that are going to come along behind us. We have a great team of interns right now. Shout out to our team of interns who have been putting in great work. And it's been so much fun to work with them and to learn and to grow with them. And that's really just the first class. And hopefully if this thing goes really, really well, for many years to come, there'll be hundreds of interns that will come through and have a really great experience, to get a chance to take those skills and to hopefully use it as a springboard for the beginning of their careers too. So a lot of excitement. And I think it's one day at a time right now for me, Michaela, like just one day at a time, and see if we can get a little bit better.
There's a lot of energy and excitement around newness, new things, new opportunities, start of a new year, and creating from scratch. I think entrepreneurs get into this mindset all the time where you're like, gotta add a new service, gotta add a new product, a new feature, a new thing, right? Because it's this constant wheel, right? To just keep spinning, just to keep going. And what I really appreciate about the work that we do at CCEI is, yes, we're really good at creating new things, but I think we're even better at reinventing and reimagining things that exist in service to new populations, new needs, new desires and wants from what we're offering. So I think my excitement about transitioning Timely Topics to a podcast style, I think, was informed by feedback we received from ideas from the team and the way that it integrated perfectly into our overall strategy and alignment for the center. And I hope that the work that we continue to do allows us to think that way and to realize that brand new is not always the best. It's setting the intentions for a new beginning on things and to reimagine what it could be when you put new people at the table or different people together, and really taking something apart and building it back up again. And I guess that's where I would love to leave this thought for entrepreneurs and people that are thinking about where are we going for 2024 as an individual, as a business, is taking a really fresh look at what you have already and thinking about ways that you can reimagine where that can go versus trying to have to start from scratch and setting these intentions of, a brand new start and what you can do with what's already there. So that's my thought. I don't know if we want to wrap with any questions from the audience, if there's anything that is left out there, and we can also kick it over to Michaela, who I told her I was going to do this. So I hope that she's prepared. I felt like, Rory, you and I have, a lot of experience in starting and ending sessions. And I know Michaela has done this Timely Topics for the last 2 years. So she's like, oh no, Rory and Jen, you can conclude this. And I feel like it's actually appropriate to kick it over to Michaela for one last time on this Timely Topics in this current format to wrap us up.
Okay, so well, I want to thank the both of you, Rory and Jen, for leading the way with this new project. The sky's the limit, and I can't wait to see where we all take it. I also want to thank you all for not only joining us today, but over the last 2 years as well. We can't wait to kick the new year off with this new iteration, and we hope you guys will continue to grow with us. So that's it for 2023, and happy holidays, everyone.